Welcome everyone. It is Monday again. They come faster and faster, it seems like these days. And so today we are celebrating, we're a little early, but my next book talk won't be till after the event. So I would rather be early than late. So we are talking about Juneteenth today, which is celebrated on June 19th, which is this coming Saturday. So I wanted to discuss it now so that you'll have a chance to pick out some of these great books to read in honor of this really important day. So don't mind my look down, I just have some notes because I don't want to mess anything up here. So Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day. So it has a number of names. And it's a holiday celebrating the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States. So it originated in Galveston, Texas. It is now celebrated annually on June 19th throughout the United States, although it is taking us in the North a little longer to catch up. People in the South have been celebrating this for a much longer time. So you're starting to see now celebrated and commemorated as an important date everywhere, as it should be. So it is commemorated on the anniversary of the date of June 19th, 1865, which was several years after the Emancipation Proclamation, but there were still a lot of things in practice going on that didn't abide by the new laws. And so this was the announcement of General Order Number 3 by the Union Army General Gordon Granger, who proclaimed freedom from slavery in Texas. So it was like the last kind of stronghold of slavery in the country. And so this date, people all over celebrate as the actual emancipation and the end of slavery in our country. So it's a very important date, and it is gaining recognition and visibility, I guess, in a way that probably should have happened a long time ago. So I wanted our library to take part in this by celebrating some great works about slavery, segregation, prejudice, told by people of color. It is their story to tell. And so we have a number of books. I have fiction and nonfiction. I'm not going to say any of it's light reads this week because it's not. And it's one of those things, it's like reading books about World War II. It's not light for a reason. That doesn't mean they're not enjoyable, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't read them or enjoy them very much. It's just you're going to be learning a lot, and they're going to be a serious subject matter, so a serious tone probably, which I think is important. But I do have fiction and nonfiction for those of you who read one or the other, although I think you should read all of it. There's also audiobook versions of many of these books, and we will be putting up a virtual bookshelf with books that in our collection are available in the system, and also doing a display inside the library for Juneteenth. So if you haven't been in yet, come in and check out the library. You don't need an appointment anymore. We ask that you wear a mask to protect our littlest ones, but you are welcome to come in anytime you want, no appointment, browse, check out the displays that we'll be putting up, get ready for summer reading that we're going to be doing, and borrow some books. So if you have any questions or if there are other things I can help you with, definitely let me know. But without further ado, let's get started discussing some books for Juneteenth. Okay, so I'm going to put a cover up and then talk about the book and keep doing that pattern. And at the end, I will put all of the covers again for you. Okay, they're all available in the Mid-Hudson Library System, if not at our library, although many of them are available here. Some of them are checked out, which I'm happy to see. So I will just be talking about them without holding the book. Let's get started. So as you saw there, we're starting very appropriately with a work of fiction entitled Juneteenth by Ralph Ellison. Ralph Ellison is most famous for his work, The Invisible Man, which has been read in high schools and colleges for a very long time now. But this book I have not had a chance to read yet. So I have a little blurb here about it that we can discuss. It is a work of fiction, and it's by an author that is well renowned. So it's cool when there is a book I haven't read by a very famous author, because sometimes their works are each very different from one another. And so it's interesting to get more than one taste of an author's style. So this book, the little blurb I have here says, quote, "Tell me what happened while there's still time," demands the dying Senator Adam Sunrader to the itinerant black preacher whom he calls Daddy Hickman. As a young man, Sunrader was Bliss, an orphan taken in by Hickman and raised to be a preacher like himself. Bliss's history encompasses the joys of young Southern boyhood, bucolic days as a filmmaker, lovemaking in a field in the Oklahoma sun, and behind it all lies a mystery. How did this chosen child become the man who would deny everything to achieve his goals. Brilliantly crafted, moving, wise, Juneteenth is the work of an American master. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Ralph Ellison has been considered an American master for a very long time now, so I think that part speaks for itself. But this book sounds very moving, very interesting, and it's also just the title, right, is so related to the holiday. It's the same name as the holiday that we are commemorating, and so it grabbed my attention immediately. It made it to my to-read list, which is growing all the time. But I think it's going to be a really interesting book, and it's beautifully written, no doubt. So I hope that you will check it out, especially if you've read The Invisible Man, and see if you think it's better or this like the same level of expertise. I'm really curious. So, okay, we have some other books to discuss. I'm going to keep doing fiction, and then we'll switch to nonfiction, okay? So this next book, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, I have read, and it is a sort of a reimagining of history. So obviously the Underground Railroad was a very real thing. But this book is an interesting thing. When Colson Whitehead was a child, I read an interview with him, and he believed that the railroad, I'm sure like many kids, was an actual railroad under the ground that brought the slaves north. And so he wrote the book from obviously an adult perspective, but imagining that it really was an underground railroad with one of those rail cars that you pump with your hands and it moves along. So in this book, the Underground Railroad, which we all know in idea, is actually a railroad. And so that came from just a childhood imagining of his, which makes perfect sense because it's called a railroad. So, in this book, Cora is a young slave on a cotton plantation in Georgia. An outcast among her fellow Africans, she is on the cusp of womanhood where greater pain awaits. And so when Caesar, a slave who recently arrived from Virginia, urges her to join him on the Underground Railroad, she seizes the opportunity and escapes with him. And it's their story about their travels through and how when they arrive in the North, things aren't as easy as they imagined they would be. I think like many trials and travails, none of which in my life have been anywhere near this serious or life-threatening. I think often we think, even with COVID, right? We think that at the end there is a switch that flips and then it goes back to normal or things are great again. And that's not really how life works in general. So I think there are some different expectations they have than when they actually arrive in the North. What that really looks like is different from how they imagined. It is both a gripping tale of one woman's will to escape the horrors of bondage and a powerful meditation on the history we all share. It is gorgeously written. It is imaginative. It has lots of fact. So it's based heavily in the reality of the Underground Railroad and slavery. But then it also has some fantasy element built in with the actual railroad. And it personalizes it with the story of Cora and Caesar. So I highly recommend this one. He has written some other books. Nickel Boys is the other one that I'm thinking of that came out after this one, which is on my list, but I haven't read yet. But I did love Underground Railroad. So if you haven't been introduced to Colson Whitehead, he is a newer author within the last 5 years or so and just taking the literary world by storm. So it's really worth checking out. Okay, next book. Speaking of taking the literary world by storm, Ta-Nehisi Coates is the next book that we're discussing, The Water Dancer, which is his first work of fiction. So he wrote a few others, Between the World and Me and We Were 8 Years in Power, which were both unbelievably moving, very powerful. Between the World and Me was written in the form of being a letter to his own son that he shared with the world, basically, and it's about growing up Black in America and the perils and trials of that. And it was just gorgeous, and I loved it so much. And then I read We Were 8 Years in Power, and it was super important given the conversations around race that we're having in our country right now. And it made a huge impact on me. So I haven't gotten to pick up this work yet because this is his first work of fiction. So this one is his boldly imagined first novel. Ta-Nehisi Coates, the National Book Award winning author of Between the World and Me, brings home the most intimate evil of enslavement, the cleaving and separation of families. This is the dramatic story of an atrocity inflicted on generations of women, men, and children, the violent and capricious separation of families, and the war they waged to simply make lives with the people that they loved. It's written by one of today's most exciting thinkers and writers, which I completely agree with. The Water Dancer is propulsive, transcendent work that restores the humanity of those from whom everything was stolen. So, and I think that that's part of the spirit of Juneteenth also, is to restore, is to make sure that these people did not die in vain, did not suffer in vain, that we learn from the things that happened to them and from the atrocities that they suffered, and we do better now, I think is the main goal, right, of the holiday and the markation of this event. So this book, while these books are difficult, like I said, difficult gets us somewhere. It can be hard to read, but it's hard to read stories about World War II and the concentration camps, and yet people read them all the time. So this is the same, I challenge you to view this in the same fashion and to pick up these stories and really try and internalize some of this, because this is our history as a country and it's really important. And then we have great writers like Ta-Nehisi Coates who write it so lyrically and beautifully and movingly that you will not want to put it down, even though it's very difficult read. So The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Okay, now I have a few nonfiction to cover before we're done for the week. As you saw there, this is a new book that just came in, and I thought it was perfect timing for the subject of this talk. It's called Buses Are A-Comin', and it's written by Charles Person with Richard Rooker. It is a firsthand exploration of the cost of boarding the bus of change to move America forward. So it was written by one of the civil rights movement's pioneers. And at 18, Charles Person was the youngest of the original freedom riders, key figures in the US civil rights movement, who left Washington, D.C. by bus in 1961 and headed for New Orleans. This powerful mix of black and white, male and female activists, including future Congressman John Lewis, set out to discover whether America would abide by Supreme Court decision that ruled segregation was unconstitutional in bus depots, waiting areas, restaurants, and restrooms nationwide. So this is a nonfiction account of the Freedom Riders, which I think is by somebody who was there, which I always think history, it can become a game of telephone where one person tells it to another person and things get changed along the way. So I love nothing more than a first person account of what occurred, somebody who was there and can tell you the real story. So I think while those people are still around, it's super important that we hear from them and that they're put into writing and things like this for future generations to hear about. So we did discuss a John Lewis book not that long ago, March, his series of graphic novels. So this was a co-writer of his, but also the youngest person there. So that's a different perspective to have. An 18-year-old is going to view those situations very differently from somebody who was older at the time. So I'm very interested in this book. It just came in. It's sitting here waiting for you to check out. So I hope you will pick it up and give it a chance. Okay, we've got 2 more nonfiction books. Okay, so again, we're back to the title of the holiday as the title of the book. This book is called On Juneteenth. It is new also. It is written by Annette Gordon-Reed, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning historian. And she's a Texas native, which is obviously Galveston was the home of the first Juneteenth celebration. And so it's important to get a Texan point of view on this. So this is the essential sweeping story of Juneteenth's integral importance to American history as told by Pulitzer Prize winning historian and Texas native. So she weaves together American history, dramatic family chronicle, and searing episodes of memoir, and provides a historian's view of the country's long road to Juneteenth, recounting its origins in Texas and the enormous hardships that African Americans have endured in the century since, from Reconstruction through Jim Crow and beyond. So this is supposed to combine personal anecdotes with poignant facts gleaned from American history. And it's really supposed to be a fantastic book. I'm super excited about it. I love the perspective, especially because these stories in the South are it's harder, right? Because that's where the majority of the movement was focused, was in, slavery mainly, while it definitely happened in the North. So much of our agriculture is based in the South, and that's where the motivation for this having slaves was, right? And so hearing about this from a historian particularly, and from somebody who is a Texas native, is a very interesting perspective. Plus, she's a Pulitzer Prize winning historian, so that tells you right there the book is going to be excellent quality. And I'm really eager to read this one. I think it's an important add to our collection. So I hope you will agree and check it out also, especially if Juneteenth is a newer concept or holiday to you. This might give you some much needed insight into why it is being commemorated and what happened in the initial time period that brought it about. Okay, we have one more book to get to. As you saw there, we're ending on in my opinion, a hopeful and joyful note with The Hill We Climb. So this is in a slim little volume because it is a poem. It's not a book per se, but there was such demand for it. So this was an inaugural poem that was read at Joe Biden's inauguration, President Biden's inauguration in 2021. So it is available in this as just a slim volume that is the poetry plus some commentary and foreword, I believe. So CNN calls it stunning. NPR called it dynamic. So on on January 20th, 2021, Amanda Gorman became the 6th and youngest poet to deliver a poetry reading at a presidential inauguration. Taking the stage after the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, Gorman captivated the nation and brought hope to viewers around the globe with her call for unity and healing. Her poem, The Hill We Climb, an inaugural poem for the country, can now be cherished in a special book edition, and it's perfect for any reader looking for some inspiration. So I know we've been through some tough reads in this book talk so far, but that's why I wanted to end with this poem, because I don't know if you all saw the performance or have watched it on video since. It gave me goosebumps, it gave me hope, it inspired me to do better and be better. And I really hope that that's what it does for everyone. And I thought that's the kind of note we need to end on, because while we need to take in all of the seriousness and the tragedy that has brought us to the place we are, I think without the hope and the inspiration, we don't have the will to move forward, which is what we need to do as a country and as readers, as people. And that hope and inspiration is so important to keep us going. And I think she provides it in spades. I reread it when it came in. As soon as it came out of the box, I picked it up and read it again. And it's just as beautiful the second time around. So I hope that if you're looking for something serious and informative, maybe you also pick this one up just as a little pick-me-up at the end, and to remind you that there is hope. Hope springs eternal, right? And so it's an important ending moment, I think, for this book talk and for your experience with some of these books. So thank you so much for joining me this week. And always, I really appreciate I'm getting to see more and more of you coming in now, and I love it. It makes me so happy. I hope that this was helpful to you. And if you need any other suggestions, just let us know. And yeah, we're looking very much forward to seeing everybody over the summer. Come on in and visit. We'll have some outdoor events. We're looking at a book sale in the fall, which is exciting. We have a new newsletter coming out at the end of June for you all. So just keep your eyes peeled for more information. And I will be back next week with another talk. And I can't wait to see you then. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week.